All right, everybody, welcome back to the Freak Show. This is part two. I have my special guest, Daniel, and we're here to bring some stories, a little bit blast from the past. Back in Fort Hood, now Fort Cavazos. This is pre 2013, so this is literally 10 years ago. We can say a
10 years
decade.
ago.
Yeah, we can say a decade.
A decade.
So we talked about that Austin trip in the first video, which is hilarious, but that just started like all these memories started coming back to me. I gotta talk about a funny story first. So remember when we were both single and we were living in the barracks, and you got rid of your car. I had my truck sent from California, so I had like a monster truck. You had a new what was it? It was a Colorado, I think.
Yeah.
It was a
Yeah, I had a
Chevrolet.
2007 Chevy Colorado.
And I had a 91 jacked up lifted Toyota pickup truck. And we would always do maintenance in the parking lot whenever the weekend would
Parking
hit.
lot outside the barracks.
Yeah. So I kind of didn't really know what I was doing on my truck because I had like a lot of friends help me, and I was just kind of like I would buy all the shit, I would help them turn wrenches, but they would actually like really fine tune certain things. And you probably saw me as like, oh, this guy knows what he's doing. Let me hit him up. I'm gonna change my headlights out. You remember that? Am I ringing any bells?
So full disclosure to the audience, to the viewers, I am also not a mechanic. I have no certifications. I am a DIY guy through and through for just about everything. That's home improvement. That's, automobiles, like whatever. And I see you, working on your truck all the time. And I'm like, man, this thing is like a 90s, like Tonka toy. And it was super lifted. It was primer gray. I was like, this guy has done all this work himself. 100%. Like, he knows what he's doing. And one of my headlights was cracked. And I got the fancy headlights. I was like, I'm going to order some of like the halo projector lights. So I ordered those. They came in. And then I went to you and I was like, hey, man, like, let's get some beer, drink in the parking lot, throw these things in. And yeah, it did not go according to plan.
I remember we're like, it's like, yeah, let's just read the directions, you know what I mean? And it's like, you looked at me like, you never changed headlights? And I was just like, on my truck, it's literally you just do one screw and it comes off and you pull it out and you disconnect the cable and you put the cable in, you put it in, and the headlight costs $20 at O'Reilly's, right? So
Yeah.
mine, I was like, yeah, I do it all the time. And yours was like complicated because there was like a bunch of other wires that I was just like, yo, we're like, where's this go to? Where's this go to? Why is this one this long and this one like 5 feet long?
There's a ground wire, there's a positive wire,
Yeah.
there's like wires, there's like a little box.
And they're like
a few.
and I remember the directions. It was like, yeah, the light red wire. And I'm just like looking, I was just like, which one looks more like light to you? And you're like,
I
fuck,
wish I had recorded that because I can still picture you holding the wires up and looking at them like, I don't know which wire is which.
Yeah.
And I'm holding the instructions like I don't know either.
And so we connect everything, and then you were like, you were like, here, can you go start it? I want to make sure it goes. And you're holding onto the wire or something. And I just literally just cranked it on, and it burnt the fuck out of your hand. Do you remember that?
Yeah,
it burned. You're like, turn it off.
And because we didn't tape anything, because I was not confident that we got it right.
Yeah.
For good reason. So I was like, let's just start it and see what happens. You cranked it. Now, to be fair, the lights actually did come on, but we also had smoke coming out of the lights. The lights were like actually smoking, and the wires were hot and burning my hand. And I was like, oh, turn it off, turn it off. And you were like, what? And you like, turn it off. My truck was loud, so you couldn't even hear me.
Oh my God, yeah.
That exhaust.
Yeah, you had the Flowmaster something, right? And it was just
the Flowmaster Super 44 giant muffler, and I'm talking about a truck with a inline 5-cylinder motor.
Yeah.
So we got a 5-cylinder engine with a giant muffler, not built for that truck, built for a V8. But I put it on there because I was obnoxious. And I didn't have pipes going out the back. I had 2-inch pipes that were dumped right past the muffler, pointing at the blacktop. This thing was ridiculous. Like I set off car alarms driving through the barracks parking
Yeah,
lot.
I remember when I would
Um,
get a ride and it would just be like, you would say something, I'll be like, what?
yeah, yeah, dude. The final straw was when me and Chelsea took a road trip to Kentucky, and like we drove 16 hours in that truck with that exhaust. We got to Kentucky, and I remember she looked at me and she's like, "You've got to do something about that exhaust." Like, so I went to a muffler shop while I was in Kentucky on leave, and had a full exhaust installed, and then we drove it back on the way home from leave. But yeah, that truck was ridiculous.
Oh, speaking of trucks, this is when I first got my truck. And it
Hmm.
was all lifted and everything. And I remember we were in I parked my truck at the motor pool, and it was a Friday and it was
Yeah,
for closeout, and I had bald tires, right? Because
you did.
I had the worst bald tires, right?
Yeah,
And
you were on slicks
yeah, I was on
for sure.
slicks and it was bad. And Sergeant Major was walking with me in the motor pool, two formation. He was like, "Hey, is that your truck, Isaac?" And I was like, "Yeah, Roger that, Sergeant Major." He's like, "Some bald ass tires, huh?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm waiting to pick up my like new ones, blah blah blah." And he was like, "All right." He's like, "How would you think if one of your soldiers had bald tires?" And I'd be like, "Oh, I'd make them get new ones, Sergeant Major." He's like, "All right, okay. At least we're on the same page." And I was like, "Yeah, Roger." He's like, "Oh, I'll see that formation." I was like, "Okay." We are in a massive squadron formation, and our first sergeant is in the very front, and I'm literally right behind him, like in a troop formation.
Hmm.
He's given his safety brief, and he was just, "All right, and another thing, NCOs, check your guys' tires, make sure they're slick. Because there's an asshole out there driving this jacked up Toyota in the parking lot with a 10-foot antenna, riding slick as fuck." And I remember first time he was like, he knew I was standing behind him, and he was like, "Isaac, you son of a bitch, like you're gonna get me fucked up, and I'm gonna fuck you up." I was like, "Oh my god." Oh, and I was just like, I'm just like ready to start pushing, you know what I mean? I remember getting called out like hardcore then. But yeah, that
Yeah,
reminded, yeah, that story about you reminded me about that, and I was just like, God, that has brought nothing but shame to me ever since. But now
yeah.
I keep up to date on
I,
everything now, but I remember back then it was rough.
I was your NCO, right?
Yeah.
Like
I think
you were
yeah.
you. So, so I'm also standing there like, oh man,
Like
like this is gonna come down. Like, they're- like I'm gonna have to drive this dude to the tire shop. We're gonna have to figure it out. Um, no, man. The story I want to talk about too about your truck that I remember was when you first showed up to Fort Hood, now Fort Cavazos, and you know, I was your like your first line supervisor, your sponsor too, and I was kind of like showing you around post and like, you know, getting you the things you needed, right? Doing that the first line thing, and you were like, "Oh, my truck, like my truck's gonna be dropped off," and I was like, "Oh, cool." And then we're at the Copeland Center, the visitor center. You remember this?
yeah,
And
I remember the yeah, when I was I remember like majority of this that where you're going right now.
yeah, and the truck shows up,
Oh, it was the
like this,
visitor center, not the Copeland Center. It was the
or
visitor
sorry,
center.
yes,
Yeah, off of
yes,
Clear Creek.
by the Bernie Beck Gate, the visitor center. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
right. We're at the visitor center in the parking lot, just kind of hanging out, and I like this is the first time I see your truck in person, and this dude pulls up in this wrecker with this primer gray Toyota in the back with a 12-foot antenna. Sergeant Major was absolutely right about that, just sticking up out of the back, and I was like, "What is this?" And I'm going through all the leader things that I'm supposed to be thinking about, and I'm like, "Is this registered? Is this thing going to pass a Texas state inspection?" Like, I had a lot of
Like,
concerns.
where's the mud
Uh,
flaps at? Like,
yeah.
what the fuck?
I was like, "Man, this dude's gonna get in trouble like just driving this on post." But yeah, that was my first impression of you that really set in was when that truck showed up, and I was like, "Oh, okay." Like he said, he had a truck. I didn't expect it to be a Toyota on like 44-inch Super Swampers. But here we are. How big were those tires? Those tires were huge.
Yeah, I think they were 37 and a halves. They were like right there.
37 and a
Yeah,
half.
37 and a halves. They weren't 38s. I have 39s on it right now. So
Oh, okay.
I
So
upgraded.
you did.
I upgraded an inch pretty much.
I love that you kept it though when you know because you PCS twice now. So I'm glad
Yeah,
that you the truck traveled with you.
yeah, that's one thing that I couldn't let go is that truck because that was like my first truck, and like one of my really good friends from California like actually spent the time to build it, and I bought all the
Yeah.
parts, and he built it for me, and it's running strong, and like it's kind of like a neck cracker when I'm driving, everyone's just like, "What the fuck is that?" Like, "Oh shit, that looks sick." It's like, you know what I mean? um, I'll have to post a picture in the stream so they can see what it is. But this is what the
Oh,
truck.
absolutely.
This is what the truck looks like right here. Bam. So yeah, that was some good times. That was I'm glad I stuck with that. And I actually, you saw the Tacoma that I actually drove in when I visited you when I
Yeah.
left Colorado. That's my daily driver now. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not. I had the. I turned 30, and I was just like, I need to kind of adult a little bit better and have something more reliable. Which actually, I drove that Tacoma. I've done a road trip for the last 2 years from Alabama Georgia line, and I driven all the way to San Francisco and back twice already.
What was your fuel economy like in that thing?
It got to
Driving.
21 realistically when I was doing the long stretches, but right now it's like 19 and 19. But I remember just when I was doing like cruise control and everything, it was staying pretty high on, roughly 21.
Oh, that's
And
not bad. That's what I
and
get in my Silverado. So
yeah, and then when I came by, I remember when I saw and visited you, I was like, the Colorado wasn't there because you got rid of it.
yeah, yeah, I did. Yeah, I needed something bigger, man. That truck was like single, Sergeant Anderson. And then,
Yeah.
it's funny you mentioned turning 30, and then like like in my case, like I met my wife and we got married in 2014, and then that truck was like the first thing to go. I've actually gotten two trucks since that truck. I had a 2011 Silverado for a few years. It was an extended cab with like the half doors,
Yeah.
and that was sufficient until our two boys got a little older. They got into middle school, and their like knees are like up against the seats. They're like riding like this, So
Yeah, because they're
I was like,
tall.
well,
Yeah.
yeah, I was like, nah, I need something bigger. So then I got the full size, the white one that I have now. But yeah, it's funny, as you age and you get older in life, how you go through life like my vehicles, and I think yours too, have like kind of upgraded with you, because I can't imagine that you would have been able to sustain driving that gray Toyota as a daily driver
No,
this
hell
whole time.
no.
There's absolutely no way. It was fine when you were just a private in the barracks at the Great Place
Yeah,
here at Fort
being
Tomaso.
21 years old, being
Yeah,
dumb. But
yeah, those are great memories though, man.
yeah, I am. Yeah, it's just like the more that we're talking, it's just like boom, boom, like more memories. Because we lived in like the barracks over there off of Old Ironsides, and
Yes.
it was kind of like it was like a dorm style with a bunch of 18 to 25-year-old guys. There's no
Yeah.
females at that point in the army in our like slot over there because they segregated the females completely different. And
Yeah.
we would just go ham, and for some reason, everything always ended up on your room because I had Waku across from me with Robles. I had Wanker down the hall was Adrian, and then Bueno at the time was in there. Like Barry was with
Yeah.
me at one point, and I remember for some reason everyone just congregated to your room. It was like because you had Tolan, which was a superstar, and then you were also a superstar, so everything just happened to your room. Like I came bearing gifts with food, and we had like there was alcohol there, and like we were watching like the movies, and like some of that like sticks hardcore, and it's really nostalgic. Like
Yeah. No, man, those are timeless memories, because like I remember you bringing food, and then me and Tolan having alcohol lined up on our kitchen counter. So it was a deal, man. It worked out. Like you came over, we had the alcohol, you brought good food. I remember having the skate. Remember playing skate?
oh
Like
my
skate.
god, yeah. The
That's
the,
a throwback.
the mega ramp, remember that? Trying
Yeah,
to do
the
the
mega
like
ramp,
when
dude.
you're
And then
going down, kept on
yeah,
fucking up.
and I had DJ Hero, like for some reason
Oh,
that was fun at the time. So I'm in there with like I had the turntable and everything too. Um, Man, that's a throwback. But that we all definitely made the best of it you know, because there's guys that like, you know, like don't make the best of it and have a rough time in there, and like we definitely like as they teach us in MRT, if you will, you know, military resiliency training, like you gotta hunt the good stuff. Because
Oh my
we
god.
you like that, yeah. We definitely did that. We made the best of it, because you know, living in the barracks, like it's not a
Yeah.
5-star hotel, but we all like hung out together. We spent a lot of time together, and we look at us now, man.
And,
You
and
know,
and it's crazy because like all those Fort Hood guys, because after 2016 when I left, we haven't
yeah,
really we didn't really hang out. So we only had about, you know, those 3.5 4 years of like hanging out with each other because then people move
yeah,
on. Um, those are some of the closest people that I've met in the army, specifically
mhm,
like that platoon that we were with, because we would always
yeah,
do platoon events no matter what it
yeah,
was. And back then it was just like, hey, we're all going to the lake, you know, and the platoon sergeant shows up, our lieutenant was there, or even our commander and first sergeant was there, and they're like leadership's bringing kegs, and I was like, hey, just make sure we got DDs, everything's good, and then like have a good time. And like, hell yeah, and then we just like had a really good thing. When I was at like Carson for a little bit, there wasn't anything necessarily like that. It was mainly just like house parties, but it wasn't like, I think it's because I started getting older, you know what I mean? And the groups of people that I was hanging out was different, you know? And it's like,
yeah.
I had a little bit more rank at that time. So it's like, you know, it kind of, and the culture of the army, I felt like changed. And you can see it too. I mean, you've been here, you've been at Hood since beginning of time
2010.
almost. Yeah. God
Yeah,
damn.
yeah. I agree with you 100% on how close the platoon was, because looking back, like I've since we worked together and we spent time together, um, in that platoon. Like I've been a squad leader, a dismount squad leader, a section leader. I was an S3 in COIC for over a year, and I've been a platoon sergeant in a scout platoon, you know, for about 18 months now, and like
Yeah.
all in all like good assignments, you know, good experiences, great people, that I've met. But I'll tell you that like going back and talking about and sharing these stories, talking about these memories that we have, like definitely like the closest group of people, the closest that I felt to a group of people, at least, throughout my almost 14 years in service, was that platoon in particular.
Yeah. And I'm
And
glad
it's
I
it's,
was,
it's great to talk about those stories.
and I'm glad I caught the back end of that too. And I still was able to be there, you know, throughout that time and everything.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
but it's that's why I kind of decided to get on this, do this like podcasting a little bit more, is like, you know, reaching out and like, you know, how's everything going? You know what I mean? And,
Yeah.
you know, let's
No, it's
podcast.
yeah, it's great, man. It's great what you're doing. And I'm looking forward to future episodes. I know there's a lot of the other guys we can probably both reach out to, and you know, get some good conversations going. But it's good to see how you're doing. Obviously, you're doing great,
Yeah,
and
100%.
having, yeah, you know, and having this conversation has been awesome. And I look forward to, you know, whatever you do next, and to future episodes.
Absolutely. I just want to give another shout out to Daniel. Thank you again for the stories and the memories and for continuing on with this podcast tonight. And to the viewers as well. Make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and I'll have more content coming out soon. Cheers.
Cheers.